Captain Alara Cade sat in silence as the stars drifted by her ship's window. Outside, the galaxy was quiet, but inside her heart, there was a storm. She had received the order just 2 hours ago. She was to marry an alien, not just any alien princess. Lyri of Zareth, daughter of the Xyrothian Emperor. The Zareth were one of the oldest and most powerful alien races in the galaxy. Their empire stretched across hundreds of planets. They were strong, graceful, and cold. Their skin shimmered like metal, their eyes glowed like stars, and their voices held a strange music. But to Alara, none of that mattered. She didn't want this. Not the dress, not the ceremony, definitely not the marriage. This is madness, she muttered to herself. She had fought in 3 major battles against the Zarath. She had watched her friends die in the war 5 years ago. And now, here she was, being offered up like a gift, all for a peace treaty. She stood up from her chair and paced the small cabin. Her boots thudded softly against the metal floor. Short brown hair was messy, her uniform still dusty from her last mission. Alara wasn't a diplomat. She was a soldier, a fighter. And now, they expected her to be a bride. Why me? She asked the empty room. Why not someone from the council? Someone trained for this? She knew the answer, because she was famous. Because she had become a symbol, the iron flame of Earth's defense. The only human to stand toe-to-toe with the Zareth commander and win. Now, Earth needed peace. The Zareth had made a bold offer, an alliance sealed by marriage. It wasn't just a symbol to them. It was tradition. In their culture, marriages between rulers meant a bond stronger than any treaty. They had asked for Alara specifically. The next morning, Alara's ship approached the Xyrothian capital Valteris. From orbit, the planet looked like a blue diamond, glowing with light. Silver cities rose from crystal lakes, and huge towers floated in the sky like glass swords. It was beautiful, but Alara felt no joy. The docking process was smooth, Zarathian. Escorts guided her ship to a landing platform shaped like a star. As the doors opened, warm air filled the cabin, carrying a strange, sweet scent. A tall Xyrothian male stood waiting. He wore long robes and held a glowing staff. Captain Alara. Cade, he said with a bow. Welcome to Valteris. I am Advisor Thren. I will guide you to the palace. Alara nodded stiffly. Let's get this over with. Thren's eyes twinkled with amusement, but he said nothing. The Xyrothian palace was made of living crystal. Walls shifted in color as they passed, glowing faintly with their steps. Alara kept her hands close to her belt, though her weapons had been taken before landing. Old habits died hard. Along the way, she saw Xyrothian guards, servants, and nobles, all of them tall, calm, and graceful. None of them looked surprised to see a human. None smiled either. At last they reached a set of tall, curved doors. 2 guards stepped aside. The princess awaits, Thren said. Alara took a breath and stepped inside. The throne room was silent. It was massive, hundreds of feet wide. The ceiling lost in soft light. Walls shimmered with flowing patterns like water and wind. At the far end stood a single figure, Princess Lyri. She was unlike any alien Alara had seen. Her skin was silver with a soft violet glow. Her long hair floated slightly, as if underwater. Her eyes, bright white, with no pupils, locked on Alara the moment she entered. She didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared. Alara expected arrogance, coldness, contempt. Instead, Nasu saw something strange. Stillness, as if Lyri had forgotten how to breathe. The silent, stretched Lyri stood tall, arms crossed, refusing to be the first to speak. Her boots echoed in the still room as she took another step forward. I'm here, she said. You asked for me. So now what? Lyri blinked. Finally, her voice was soft, like a whisper through wind chimes. You are not what I expected? Alara raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. You thought I'd be? Prettier. Lyri tilted her head. No, I thought you would be. Smaller. That made Alara snort. Sorry to disappoint. A flicker of something passed across the princess's face, a hint of a smile, It was gone in a second. "I've read your file," Leary said. "Your victories, your losses, your defiance. And I've read yours," Ilara replied. "All perfect, all planned. You never lost a battle but you. Never took a risk either that made the air change." The guards around the room shifted slightly, tense, but Leary didn't get angry. She simply stepped forward, her robes whispering on the crystal floor. Ilara noticed for the first time Leary walked like someone who carried a great weight. Though she didn't show it in her face, "I did not agree to this union lightly," Leary said. "It was not my idea." "Good," Ilara said. "We agree on something." Silence again, but it wasn't cold now. It was thoughtful. Later, Ilara was led to her guest quarters, though guest didn't feel like the right word. The room was beautiful, but empty. No furniture, besides the basics. No windows. Just clean light and soft music humming from the walls. She sat on the bed, her thoughts spinning. Princess Leary had been strange. Not cruel, not distant, but controlled. Like someone hiding behind glass. But that moment, the first look had felt real. Why had she frozen? What had she seen in Ilara that made her stop? Lara didn't know. But something told her this was more than a marriage. More than a treaty? This was the start of something neither of them understood yet. That night, Lara couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about Earth, her old squad, her family, all of them counting on her. She wasn't sure if she was strong enough for this kind of mission. Give her a battlefield, a weapon, an enemy that she could handle. But this was politics, emotion, trust. It scared her more than any war. The next morning was a knock at her door. Thren appeared again, but this time he wasn't smiling. "The princess has requested your presence," he said. Ilara stood, pulling on her uniform. "More small talk?" Thren paused. "No, she wishes to show you something. Something ... private." Ilara frowned. "Private?" Thren only nodded as they walked through the palace's inner gardens. Ilara found herself sweating slightly, not from heat, but from the feeling that something important was about to happen. They reached a quiet chamber at the edge of the gardens. Leary stood alone inside, looking at a floating crystal globe. Ilara stepped in. The doors closed behind her. Leary turned. Right. Her eyes were calm. This time, there was no guard, no formality, just the two of them. "I wish to speak freely," the princess said. "No titles, no masks." Ilara blinked. "All right, talk." Leary stepped closer. "You hate this union," she said. "I can feel it. I don't hate peace," Ilara said carefully. "But I don't believe it should be forced." "I agree," Leary said. That surprised Ilara. "But something happened yesterday," Leary continued. "When I saw you, I felt something I have never felt." Ilara's breath caught. "What? Fear? Curiosity? Wonder?" A pause. "I stood still," Leary said, "because in that moment, I saw someone who could destroy me or save me." Ilara didn't know what to say. The silence stretched again, but this time, it was no longer empty. It was the beginning. Captain Ilara Cade stood frozen. Princess Leary's words still echoed in her mind. "I saw someone who could destroy me. Or save me." Ilara had faced powerful alien warriors. She had stared into the eyes of death more times than she could count. But this moment was unlike anything she had ever felt. There was no threat in Leary's voice. No fear in her eyes. Only honesty that made it even more dangerous. Ilara took a step back, suddenly unsure of herself. "I'm not here to destroy anyone," she said. Leary nodded slowly. "Nor am I." They stood in silence, facing each other, separated by a few steps and an entire galaxy of differences. The private chamber was quiet. A soft light shimmered on the walls. Strange glowing plants filled the corners, giving off a gentle warmth. The crystal globe Leary had been looking at floated in the air between them. Inside it, stars moved slowly, like a living map of the galaxy. Leary touched the globe lightly. It pulsed once, then faded. I come here when I want to think, she said. This is where I go to feel ... small. Ilara raised an eyebrow. You? A princess? Feeling small? Leary looked at her. Yes. Power does not make one large. It often makes the soul shrink. Ilara gave a short laugh. You talk like a philosopher. Leary tilted her head. Do you humans not? Not when we're about to be forced into marriage with an alien we barely know? That brought a pause. Then, slowly, Leary gave the smallest smile. It is not easy for me either, she admitted, but ... you interest me. Lara blinked. That's a strange way to start. A marriage. I do not speak to impress you, Leary said. I speak the truth. They sat down on a curved bench made of stone and light. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Finally, Leary asked, Why did you accept the order? I didn't, Ilara said. But Earth's council made it clear. Either I come willingly, or they send someone else. Someone weaker. Someone the Zerath might crush if things go wrong. You came to protect them. Ilara nodded. That's what I've always done. Leary looked at her with something close to respect. I was chosen to lead at a young age, she said, but I never chose war. I studied peace, diplomacy, culture. But when the war began, I had to watch my people suffer. I couldn't stop it. Ilara looked away. I know how that feels. The air between them began to change, no longer heavy with tension, but with curiosity. Leary stood and walked to a nearby wall. She touched it, and it turned transparent. Outside, the city of Vulturus glowed with soft lights and flying ships. Towers spiraled high into the clouds. Bridges floated above gardens that shimmered with silver trees. Our people believe that all things move in circles, Leary said. Time, pain, peace, even enemies. Ilara stood beside her, arms crossed. I believe in choices, breaking cycles, changing the game. Leary looked at her. Perhaps we are not so different, only shaped by different stories. Ilara studied the alien princess's face. There was strength there, but not the kind that came from weapons or politics. It was quiet. Still, the kind of strength that waited, not attacked, and yet Leary had frozen. When she saw Ilara, why? What did you see in me? Ilara asked finally. Leary turned to face her. The question seemed to catch her off guard. I saw someone unafraid to speak the truth, she said slowly. Someone who did not bow. Someone... Real Ilara didn't reply. She just nodded once. For a soldier like her, being real had always been risky. But for once it seemed to matter. That night, Ilara was taken back to her quarters. The palace was quiet, but not in a cold way. It felt like a giant being holding its breath. Waiting, she sat at the small desk near the corner and opened a communication. Tablet. A message from Earth blinked on the screen. Status. It was short and cold. Council style, Ilara stared at it. What should she say? She didn't type anything. Instead, she looked out the window. She had requested it after her meeting with Leary. The Zerath didn't usually give guests windows, but they had made an exception for her. The stars outside looked the same as they did back home. Maybe that was the one truth that stayed the same. Across all species, the next day a message came from Leary. Meet me in the Sky Garden. Ilara followed the directions through winding corridors and moving staircases until she reached it. The Sky Garden was floating literally. A platform of green, silver, and white hung in the air high above the city.
Ow.
Strange birds flew by, wings glowing softly. The air smelled like rain and spice. Leary stood near a tree with leaves shaped like stars. You came, she said. You asked, Ilara replied. They walked together in silence, feet brushing soft moss. Every step felt lighter up here. I have been thinking, Leary said finally, about our situation. Lara glanced at her, and I don't want to lie to my people, Leary said. Or to you, so I will not pretend this marriage is something I desired. But I also will not fight it if we can agree on one thing. Ilara stopped walking. What thing? That we make it ours? Not theirs? Ilara's eyes narrowed. You mean we do it our way? Leary said. No fake smiles. What? False loyalty. We learn about each other. We lead if we must. But only if we both choose it. Alara stared at her. Okay. No alien she had ever met spoke this way. Most were proud, distant, hard. But Leary was ... open, direct. It was refreshing and dangerous. Because now, Alara wasn't sure if she wanted to oppose the marriage anymore. As the days passed, Alara and Leary met again and again. Sometimes they talked about history. Other times, they sparred in the palace. Jamela was surprised at how fast Leary moved with a blade. And sometimes they just sat in silence, watching stars or listening to ancient Zarathian songs. It was slow, careful, real. And each time, Leary's stillness from that first day returned, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was wonder one evening. As they sat near the floating trees again, Leary said, "My people do not touch unless it means something." Alara raised an eyebrow. "What kind of something?" "Respect, trust. Sometimes, ... more." There was a quiet pause. Then Leary reached out and lightly touched Alara's hand. It was soft, quick, but powerful. Alara didn't pull away. She still didn't know what this marriage would become. She still didn't trust the council, or the empire, or fate. But for the first time, she felt something different. Not duty, not anger, not fear. Possibility. And that changed everything. Captain Alara Cade stood at the palace balcony, looking out over the glowing city of Valtoris. The soft light of the twin moons bathed the crystal towers in a pale silver. It was beautiful, almost peaceful. But Alara's heart was still heavy. The marriage was no longer just a political tool. It had become something ... complicated. Beside her, Princess Leary stepped forward quietly, her silver skin shimmering under the moonlight. Her violet glow was soft, almost warm. Alara remembered the first day they met, how Leary had stood still, frozen at the sight of a human dot. Now, she smiled. Alara turned to her. "How do you do that? Smile like you mean it?" Leary laughed softly. "I do not always smile, but when I do, it is because I choose to." Alara shook her head. "You're impossible." "Perhaps," Leary said, "but also very real." There. Days had grown busier. Instead of cold silence or forced politeness, they spent time together learning about each other's worlds. Alara showed Leary images of Earth, green forests, blue oceans, vast cities full of lights. Leary spoke of Zarif's long history, its traditions, and the burden of ruling an empire sometimes. They disagreed. Strongly, Alara hated the way Zarithian law limited freedom. Leary found it difficult to understand humanity's messy emotions and unpredictable choices. But they listened. They argued, yes, but with respect. One afternoon in the Grand Library, Alara watched Leary study a book about human wars. The princess's white eyes flicked across the pages with intense focus. "Why? Do you fight so much?" Leary asked softly. Alara sighed. "Because sometimes it's the only way to protect what matters." Leary nodded slowly. "I understand sacrifice, but I wish for a future without it." Alara met Leary's gaze. "Me too." Alara's resistance to the marriage had softened, but old fears remained. She feared losing herself, losing humanity's freedom, losing control. Leary, too, carried fears of failure, of betrayal, of loneliness. One evening, during a quiet walk through the palace's gardens, Alara asked, "Do you ever wish to be free? Without duty? Without expectations?" Leary stopped and looked up at the stars. "Every day, but duty is my life. I cannot choose otherwise." Alara placed a hand gently on Leary's arm. Sometimes the strongest choice is to break the cycle.
Leary
Looked down at Alara's hand, then back up into her eyes. There was a moment, a spark between them. A sudden alarm shattered the night's calm. Red lights flashed across the palace walls. Guards ran through corridors. Alara's heart raced. "What's happening?" she demanded. Leary's face was grim. "The rogue faction. They do not want peace. They want war." Alara clenched her fists. "What can we do?" Leary's voice was steady. "We find them. Together, Lara and Leary moved quickly through the palace, gathering trusted allies. They went to the command center, where holograms of the city flickered. The rogue faction had seized a nearby communications tower. They planned to send a false message, declaring war between humans and Zareth. "This will start a war we cannot win," Alara said. Leary nodded. "We must stop them before it is too late." The two women led a small team into the dark streets. Lyra's experience as a soldier guided them through narrow alleys and shadowed paths. Leary's knowledge of the city's secret tunnels helped them avoid patrols. The tension was high. Every step could be the last. They reached the tower's base, guarded by armed men. Lara raised her voice. "We want to talk." The guards laughed, preparing to attack. Without warning, Alara charged. Taking down the nearest guard with a swift strike, Leary moved beside her, her hands glowing with strange energy. Together, they fought with a perfect rhythm, Alira's fierce strength, Leary's precise power. Inside the tower, the rogue leader awaited them, a man named Zarthos, who believed the Empire was better ruled by fear. "You think you can stop us?" he sneered. "This marriage is a lie. War will come, whether you like it or not." Leary stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Not while we breathe." Alara aimed her weapon. "This ends now." A fierce battle followed. Zarthos wielded dark technology, but Alara and Leary's combined skills were stronger. With teamwork, they overpowered him and disabled the communication devices. As the danger passed, Alara looked at Leary with new respect. "You were incredible," she said. Leary smiled softly. "So were you." Back at the palace, the threat had been stopped, but the warning was clear. The fragile peace depended on more than a marriage. It depended on trust, on courage. Alara and Leary sat together, exhausted but alive. "We cannot let fear rule us," Alara said quietly. "No," Leary agreed. "We must be stronger than hate." They reached for each other's hands. In that moment, it was no longer about duty. It was about hope. The palace was quiet. The city of Valturus sparkled below like a sea of stars, but inside, shadows stirred. Captain Alara Cade sat alone in her chamber, her mind heavy. The recent attack had shaken them. It's not just because of the danger, but because it revealed how fragile their peace really was. The rogue faction was only the beginning. There were others who wanted war, others who wanted to see Earth and Zeroth fall back into bloodshed. Alara's thoughts drifted to the Council on Earth. Their messages had grown colder, more demanding. They did not trust the Alliance. They wanted proof that Alira's marriage would stop the war. And then there was Leary. Alara had come to respect the princess, to admire her strength and honesty. But sometimes she wondered if Leary truly trusted her. Could they really build peace on a foundation of fear and doubt? The next morning, Alara met Leary in the palace gardens. The silver trees swayed gently in the light breeze. Leary was waiting by a crystal fountain, her eyes reflecting the water's shimmer. "Alara," she said softly, "you seem troubled." Alara shook her head. "I'm just thinking about everything." Leary's gaze was calm but intense. "Tell me." Alara took a deep breath. "The council wants proof. Proof that this marriage means something, that it will end the war." Leary nodded slowly. "They have every right to ask. But what if they don't understand?" Alara asked. "What if they see us as enemies pretending to be friends?" Leary stepped closer. "Then we must show them." Alara looked into Leary's white eyes and felt a strange warmth. "How?" Leary smiled faintly. "By standing together, by acting as one." Their time together grew more intense. They attended meetings, made speeches, and worked to unite their people. But it was never easy. Many on both sides hated the idea of a marriage alliance. Humans whispered about betrayal. Zerothians whispered about weakness. One afternoon, Alara was approached by a group of human diplomats. Their leader, Ambassador Reynolds, was stern and cold. "Captain," he said, "this alliance is a gamble. Cannot risk everything on a personal relationship." Alara met his eyes. "It's more than that. It's trust." Reynolds shook his head. Trust is earned, not given, and you have yet to prove it. Ilara clenched her fists, but kept her voice steady. I'm doing everything I can. That evening, Ilara found Leary in the palace library. The room was filled with books and soft light. Leary was reading an ancient text about Xerath's peace treaties. We need a plan, Leary said without looking up. A way to prove our alliance is real. Ilara sat beside her, something that no one can ignore. Leary closed the book and met Ilaire's gaze. I have an idea, a ceremony, one that will show our people we are united. Ilara raised an eyebrow. A ceremony? Yes, not just a wedding, a public vow. To fight for peace. Together, Ilara nodded slowly. It could work, but it would also make us targets. Leary smiled. We are already targets. It's better to face that truth openly. Days passed in preparation. News spread across both worlds. The upcoming ceremony became a symbol of hope and a beacon for those who wanted war. On the morning of the ceremony, Ilara dressed in a simple uniform, but her heart pounded. Leary wore a flowing robe that shimmered like the night sky. They stood side by side on a platform overlooking the capital. Thousands of people from both Earth and Xerath had gathered. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Leary spoke first, her voice clear and steady. We come from different worlds, different histories. But today we choose unity. Ilara followed. We choose peace. It's not because it is easy, but because it is necessary. The crowd was silent. Then slowly applause began. It grew louder, and louder until it filled the air. For a moment, the impossible seemed possible. But as the ceremony ended, a sudden explosion rocked the city. Smoke and fire burst from a nearby plaza. Chaos erupted. Ilaire's training kicked in immediately. She grabbed Leary's hand. We have to help. Together, they rushed toward the danger. They found a group of insurgents attacking civilians. The rogue faction had struck again. Ilara fought fiercely, her years of combat experience saving lives. Leary used her powers to shield the innocent and disable weapons. The people looked at them not as enemies, but as protectors. After the battle, Ilara and Leary stood amidst the rubble, breathing hard. We showed them what we are, Ilara said. But the fight isn't over. Leary nodded. No, but we have taken the first step. Ilara looked at her. I never thought I'd say this, but I believe in us. Leary smiled softly. So do I. As night fell, the city healed slowly. But Ilara knew the shadows still lurked. The marriage had become more than a duty. It was a promise to fight for peace, against all odds, and together they would face whatever came next. The morning sun rose over Valtris, casting soft light on the crystal towers and silver trees. But the city still carried the scars of last night's attack. Smoke curled from damaged buildings, and the air was heavy with tension. Captain Ilara. Cade stood beside Princess Leary on the palace balcony, watching the city wake. The events of the past weeks had changed everything, not just their marriage, but the future of two worlds. Ilara looked at Leary, her alien bride. No longer a symbol of forced duty, Leary was now a partner, as an ally, maybe even something more. We have come far, Ilara said quietly. Leary nodded, her violet eyes reflecting the rising sun. Further than I ever imagined. The attack had shaken the people of Valtris and Earth, but it had also united them. Both worlds saw clearly now the cost of war and the power of peace. Ilara and Leary knew their work was far from done. There were still enemies in the shadows, those who wanted to break the alliance, to start a war that could destroy everything. But now, they had something stronger than fear or duty. They had trust. The first order of business was to rebuild. Together, they led efforts to repair the city. Ilara coordinated Earth's aid ships, bringing food, medicine, and engineers. Leary rallied her people, organizing volunteers and security. Despite the hard work, moments of hope shone through. Children played near the healing gardens. Markets opened with fresh food. Songs of peace echoed through the streets. One evening, Ilara and Leary walked together through the gardens. watching a group of Zyrethian children learning to play Earth's simple games. Leary smiled. They are learning more than games. They are learning trust. Alada squeezed her hand. And we're learning too. Yet challenges remained. A council meeting was called to discuss the future. Delegates from Earth and Zareth gathered in a massive chamber filled with holographic maps and glowing symbols. Ambassador Reynolds sat stiffly, watching Ilara and Leary with suspicion. Captain Cade, he began, the council demands proof that this alliance will last. That your marriage is more than politics. Ilara stood tall. It already is. We have faced danger together. We have saved lives together, and we will continue to fight for peace, Leary added. We ask for your trust. It's not blind faith, but a chance to prove ourselves. The room was silent. Then, slowly, a few delegates nodded. Others remained uncertain, but the tide was turning. As days passed, Lyra and Leary's bond deepened. One night, in the quiet of the palace, Ilara looked at Leary. Do you ever regret this? She asked. Leary shook her head. No, it is not perfect. But it is real. Ilara smiled. Neither is anything worth fighting for. They sat together, hands entwined. Distance between worlds closing with every heartbeat suddenly. News arrived of a new threat, a coalition of rogue planets planning to exploit the fragile peace. Ilara and Leary faced the challenge head-on, together. They formed a new alliance, humans and Zarathians, united with other species who desired peace. Ships flew across the stars. Carrying messages of unity and strength, Ilara commanded the Earth fleet. While Leary led her people in diplomatic missions, their partnership became a symbol not just of marriage, but of hope for the galaxy. The final battle came near a distant star system. Ilara's fleet engaged, the coalition's warships in a fierce fight. Lasers cut through space, explosions lit the darkness. Leary's diplomats worked to turn enemies into allies. Slowly, the coalition's forces weakened as more ships switched sides than the battle's heart. Ilara's ship faced the enemy flagship. With skill and courage, she broke their defenses. The coalition surrendered. Returning home, Lara and Leary were greeted as heroes. A grand celebration was held in Volterus. Music filled the air, lights sparkled like stars, and the people cheered. Leary stood before the crowd, her voice strong. Today, we begin a new era, not ruled by fear, but by hope. Not by war, but by peace. Ilara took her hand, smiling. Together, we will protect that future. As the stars twinkled above, Ilara and Leary looked toward the horizon. The galaxy was wide and full of challenges, but united, they were stronger than ever. The alien princess who once stood still at the sight of a human had found her equal, and together, they had changed the fate of worlds.